A multitude of significant events are unfolding across the globe, demanding our attention. Today, however, we turn our focus inward, examining a deepening crisis within the United States, a situation impacting communities from coast to coast. We will delve into the specific challenges faced by 10 states rapidly descending into poverty and homelessness, exploring the complex factors driving this alarming trend. Stick with us, as we'll provide concluding thoughts and analysis at the end of this report. Have you ever passed by a collection of tents clustered beneath a highway overpass and pondered the circumstances that led to such a scene? How did we arrive at a point where individuals can work diligently, often full-time, yet still find themselves without a place to call home, relegated to living on the streets? This isn't just an isolated incident. It's a stark reality playing out in numerous cities. Now, broaden your perspective. Imagine not just individuals, but entire states grappling with escalating crises. Envision regions where economic hardship tightens its grip on families daily, where the fundamental need for affordable housing becomes an unattainable aspiration, and where shelters meant to be temporary havens are consistently overflowing, unable to meet the surging demand. The situation isn't confined to a handful of urban centers. It's spreading with the intensity of a wildfire, engulfing communities large and small. Disturbingly, some of the states now facing this precipice were once celebrated embodiments of the American dream, places synonymous with opportunity, prosperity, and stability. Today, they stand perilously close to widespread collapse. The contributing factors are varied and complex, ranging from exorbitantly high rental costs that consume disproportionate amounts of income to the devastating impact of natural disasters that can obliterate entire communities in moments, erasing homes and livelihoods. The downward spiral is undeniable, a tangible crisis affecting millions. These are the 10 U.S. states currently experiencing the fastest descent into the intertwined challenges of poverty and homelessness. Before we dive deeper, if you find this type of in-depth analysis valuable, please consider liking this video and subscribing to our channel. Your support is crucial for helping us continue to produce and share important content like this. Also, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We value our diverse audience. Number 10. California. At first glance, it often resembles paradise. The landscape boasts iconic palm trees swaying gently, sun-drenched beaches stretching along the coast, and opulent billion-dollar residences dotting the hillsides. It projects an image of success and glamour. However, venture just slightly off the well-trodden path, perhaps take an unintended turn, and a starkly different reality emerges. You'll encounter entire thoroughfares lined not with boutiques, but with tents serving as primary residences. You'll witness individuals forced to sleep in their vehicles, turning cars into makeshift bedrooms. Sidewalks, typically pathways for pedestrians, are transformed into rudimentary shelters, offering the only available refuge for many. This contrasting image is contemporary California. It's a place grappling with the dubious distinction of having the highest homeless population anywhere in the United States. Official counts indicate over 187,000 people are without stable housing, and tragically, that number continues to climb relentlessly. You might be taken aback to learn just how many among this population hold down jobs, are raising children, or even possess college degrees. The narrative of homelessness being solely about personal failing simply doesn't hold water here. In California, securing housing has transitioned from a basic necessity to a luxury item, something out of reach for a vast segment of the population. Median rents in major metropolitan areas like San Francisco soar, hitting figures close to $3,000 per month, a sum that dwarfs the income of many hardworking residents. And here's a critical point. This crisis isn't exclusive to the major cities. Smaller towns and rural communities across the state are also struggling profoundly, facing similar pressures and inadequate resources. How did the Golden State, renowned for its economic power and cultural influence, morph into a territory where countless individuals simply cannot afford to live? What underlies the trend of more people departing California than arriving? And perhaps the most pressing question, If one of the wealthiest economies on the planet cannot rectify this situation, who possibly can? We urge you to keep watching, as the conclusions we draw at the end will shed further light on these critical issues. Number 9. New York. The very name evokes images of towering skyscrapers piercing the clouds, the dazzling brilliance of Broadway lights illuminating the night, and the powerful narrative of dreams materializing against a vibrant urban backdrop. This is the picture often painted, the perception ingrained in popular culture, or at least, that's the image we've historically cultivated. But lean in. Take a more discerning look beyond the glittering facade, and you'll confront a different New York. This is the New York where homelessness surged by a staggering 18% in the year 2023 alone. It's a place where shelters, intended as emergency support, are consistently operating at maximum capacity, turning away those in desperate need. Families, children, the elderly. These vulnerable groups are increasingly visible, seeking refuge on subway trains during cold nights, crammed into already overburdened shelters, or relegated to temporary stays in emergency hotels, a far cry from stable housing. The scale of the crisis is immense, and here's the statistic that truly underscores the severity. New York City, just one metropolis within the state, is home to over 100,000 homeless individuals. This single city's homeless population surpasses that of entire states combined. But what forces are driving this devastating trend? Skyrocketing rental prices are a primary culprit, making even modest accommodations unaffordable for many. A chronic lack of genuinely affordable housing options exacerbates the problem, leaving few alternatives for those struggling financially. Furthermore, the state's support systems are overwhelmed, straining to manage the dual pressures of long-standing local poverty and the significant influx of migrants seeking refuge and assistance. One might assume that a place wielding such immense financial power and global influence would possess the resources and strategies to effectively address this crisis. Yet, instead of solutions gaining traction, the societal cracks are visibly widening. How long can this situation persist before the weight becomes truly unbearable? How close are we to a tipping point, a moment where the system buckles under the strain? Number 8. Florida. It's often depicted as the quintessential retirement destination, the place you envision spending your golden years. The imagery is potent. Pristine white sand beaches inviting relaxation, palm trees gracefully swaying in the warm breeze, and abundant sunshine bathing the landscape virtually year-round. It paints an idyllic picture, a postcard-perfect vision of leisure and tranquility. However, pull back the glossy veneer of that postcard, and you'll uncover a reality that is far more troubling and complex. This is contemporary Florida, a state where an alarmingly increasing number of older Americans are finding themselves facing homelessness for the first time in their lives. You would likely be shocked by the sheer number of seniors, individuals in their 60s and 70s, who are now living out of their cars, residing in transient motels, or even sleeping on sidewalks. A stark contrast to the retirement dreams they may have once held. Many of these individuals never anticipated ending up in such precarious circumstances. The core issue? Rental costs in Florida have exploded, rising at rates that far outpace income growth for many residents. Consider places like Miami, where the median rent now stands well above $2,500 per month. This figure is particularly jarring when contrasted with the average monthly Social Security check, which hovers just slightly above $1,800. The arithmetic simply doesn't work for a significant portion of the senior population relying on fixed incomes. That fundamental mismatch leaves countless older Floridians unable to afford basic housing, forcing them into instability and homelessness. These aren't just individuals who made poor financial choices. Many worked diligently their entire lives, saved responsibly, and contributed to society. Now, in their later years, they find themselves priced out of the housing market, aged out of employment opportunities, and ultimately pushed out onto the margins. And this crisis isn't limited solely to the elderly population. Families with children are also struggling mightily across the state. Eviction rates have spiked dramatically in major cities such as Orlando and Tampa, indicating widespread housing instability. Finding affordable housing has become nearly impossible for low and middle-income families. New construction efforts are failing to keep pace with the escalating demand, and waiting lists for housing assistance programs stretch on for years, offering little immediate relief. The state is undeniably booming in terms of tourism and new development, attracting visitors and investment. But for regular Floridians, especially those on fixed incomes or earning low wages, it's an entirely different narrative, a story of increasing hardship and diminishing options. What happens when a place marketed as paradise becomes too expensive for its own residents, including its vulnerable seniors, to survive? Number 7. Washington. When you think of Washington state, images of aromatic coffee, influential tech giants headquartered in gleaming towers, and vast expanses of evergreen trees likely come to mind. That's the common perception. Yet concealed beneath this surface lies a darker reality that many observers miss. This state is currently among the hardest hit by the homelessness crisis in the entire United States. Tens of thousands of its residents are living unsheltered, residing in tents pitched in public spaces, sleeping in their cars, or finding refuge on sidewalks. The scale is staggering. You would be shocked to learn that Seattle alone witnessed a 22% increase in homelessness between the years 2022 and 2023. But these are not merely abstract statistics. They represent profound changes impacting entire neighborhoods. Sidewalks have transformed into makeshift communities born out of necessity. Children are attempting to complete their homework in crowded shelters, lacking the stability needed for education. Parents are juggling multiple jobs, working tirelessly, yet still finding themselves unable to afford the basic necessity of rent. The median rent in cities like Seattle has surged past $2,200 per month, while the supply of affordable housing options consistently fails to meet the overwhelming demand. Even individuals earning what might seem like a reasonable income, around $70,000 a year, are struggling to make ends meet in this expensive environment. Furthermore, this crisis extends beyond the major urban centers. Rural areas throughout Washington are now experiencing significant spikes in homelessness, particularly affecting vulnerable populations, such as veterans and single mothers. A confluence of factors, addiction, mental health challenges, and persistent inflation, collide to create a perfect storm. The existing safety nets, including social services and support programs, are stretched thin and overwhelmed by the sheer volume of need. What's even more concerning is the harsh climate. Imagine being unsheltered when temperatures plummet below freezing during the long, wet winters. Tragically, many individuals do not survive these brutal conditions each year. While the state is implementing programs, opening shelters, and launching initiatives to combat the crisis, the current efforts are proving insufficient. The scale of the problem continues to outpace the available resources. The crisis deepens with each passing year. What occurs when a state celebrated for its innovation and natural beauty cannot adequately house its own population? How can progress be claimed when it leaves so many residents behind, struggling for basic survival? Number 6. Massachusetts. The name often evokes images of charming cobblestone streets, the esteemed prestige of Ivy League institutions, and a rich history echoing through every corner, from Boston's Freedom Trail to the coastal towns. It's a state steeped in tradition and academic excellence. Yet beneath the layers of legacy and learning, a troubling unraveling is occurring. Walk just a few blocks away from the manicured university campuses or the carefully preserved historic districts, and you encounter a starkly different reality, one often hidden from casual view. This is contemporary Massachusetts, a state currently grappling with one of the most severe family homelessness crises in the entire nation. And you'd be shocked to know, this crisis shows no signs of slowing down. In fact, it's intensifying. In the year 2023, official reports indicated that Massachusetts shelters housed over 7,500 families living in emergency shelters, motels, or other forms of temporary housing. Critically, this figure represents families, not just individuals. Many of these families include working parents with children attending local schools, people doing everything society deems correct, yet still losing the battle to maintain stable housing. What's driving this alarming trend? Sky-high housing costs are a major factor, placing immense strain on family budgets. Tight rental markets offer few affordable alternatives, and available space, particularly family-sized units, is extremely limited. Consider Boston, where the median rent has now surpassed $3,000 per month. Compounding this, vacancies are exceptionally rare, making the search for affordable housing an almost insurmountable task for many. But it's not solely about rent. The state is also experiencing a dramatic increase in the number of newly arrived migrant families seeking refuge. This influx has pushed the existing shelter system, already struggling to meet local needs, far beyond its capacity limits. Many shelters are perpetually full. Consequently, families are being placed in motels, school gymnasiums, and even college dormitories during off-seasons as makeshift solutions. These are temporary fixes for a problem that is anything but temporary, highlighting a systemic failure. Furthermore, Massachusetts is a state known for its cold, harsh weather. Freezing winters and brutal storms pose significant risks. For families lacking stable shelter, the conditions are not merely uncomfortable, they are genuinely dangerous. Some families resort to sleeping in cars. Others rely on the generosity of friends and relatives, bouncing between temporary accommodations. Children are growing up without the stability of a place to call home, their education and well-being jeopardized. How does a state boasting some of the best hospitals and schools in the world fail so profoundly in providing the most fundamental human need? Shelter. What does this reveal about the fragility of economic stability, even in places perceived as prosperous and well-resourced? It's a quiet crisis, often obscured by academic prestige and polished cityscapes, but the reality on the ground is increasingly dire. Number 5. Hawaii. It's often marketed as the ultimate escape, the idyllic getaway. Visions of azure blue oceans, majestic volcanoes silhouetted against the sky, and graceful hula dancers epitomize the popular image. But for a significant number of locals, life in Hawaii is far removed from this tourist paradise. It's a daily struggle for survival. This is the reality of contemporary Hawaii, and you would be shocked to discover that this state possesses the highest rate of homelessness per capita in the entire United States. Let that stark fact sink in. For every 10,000 residents in Hawaii, approximately 45 are experiencing homelessness. Compare this figure to the national average of 18 per 10,000, and the alarming scale of the crisis becomes undeniably clear. But what makes this situation even more acute? Hawaii is extraordinarily expensive. Really expensive. In Honolulu, the median rent consistently hovers around $2,600 per month. Meanwhile, the costs of essential goods like food and utilities are significantly higher than on the mainland due to the island's remote location and reliance on imports. Now, add another devastating layer to this already challenging picture. In 2023, the deadliest U.S. wildfire in over a century ravaged the island of Maui, displacing thousands of residents in a matter of hours. Entire communities, particularly the historic town of Lahaina, were reduced to ash, erasing homes, businesses, and lifetimes of memories. Some of those who lost their homes in the fire were already living precariously on the economic edge. Now, having lost everything, they have fallen off that edge entirely, facing unimaginable hardship with few immediate options. While tourism, the lifeblood of Hawaii's economy, has begun to bounce back and hotels are filling up once more, the recovery is uneven. Many of the workers who clean those hotel rooms, serve those tropical drinks, and maintain the infrastructure that supports the tourism industry have nowhere affordable to live themselves. Local residents are increasingly being pushed out by the high cost of living, priced out of their own communities, and in the tragic case of the Maui wildfires, literally burned out of their homes. One might assume that an island, geographically contained, would be manageable enough to handle a crisis of this nature. However, the truth is that resources are spread thin across all the islands. When the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows over the stunning landscapes, many residents are left in darkness, both literally and figuratively. No secure roof over their heads, no comfortable bed to rest in, just the rhythmic sound of the ocean waves and the gnawing anxiety about what tomorrow will bring. This is the harsh reality hidden behind the picturesque facade of paradise. Number 4. Illinois. You likely think of soaring skylines dominating the view, a rich jazz history filling the night air, and the palpable energy of Chicago, a city that arguably built the Midwest. It projects an image of industry, culture, and urban dynamism. But venture beyond the tourist hotspots and the polished downtown facades, and you'll uncover a narrative that's unraveling rapidly, a story often overlooked. This is contemporary Illinois, a state where the rhythm of everyday life for many is being drowned out by the growing cacophony of poverty, displacement, and desperation. In the year 2023, Chicago alone witnessed a staggering rise in family homelessness by nearly 30%. This alarming increase is fueled by a perfect storm of converging factors: intense economic pressure on working families, a chronic scarcity of affordable housing options, and overwhelming demand placed upon the city's shelter systems. Entire neighborhoods are undergoing transformation, but not in the ways residents had hoped. Rents in certain areas have skyrocketed, while wages for low-income workers, the backbone of many service industries, have remained stubbornly stagnant, failing to keep pace with the rising cost of living. For countless families, the daily reality has become an impossible choice: pay the rent or buy groceries. Affording both is often out of the question. But guess what? This isn't solely a Chicago problem. Smaller towns and communities across Illinois are also experiencing the widening cracks in the social fabric. As traditional manufacturing jobs disappear and new housing development lags significantly behind demand, many residents are left with dwindling options and increasing instability. Schools in these areas are observing declining enrollment numbers, not because families are achieving upward mobility and moving away, but because they are being forced out due to economic hardship, or worse, becoming homeless within their own communities. The state's shelters are overwhelmed. Emergency housing programs are operating at full capacity, and families frequently find themselves stuck on long waiting lists with nowhere else to turn in the interim. And let's not forget the unforgiving Illinois weather. Winters are harsh and potentially life-threatening for anyone without stable shelter. Even a single night spent outdoors in freezing temperatures can have devastating consequences. While many dedicated individuals and organizations are stepping up to provide assistance, the existing infrastructure is simply not equipped to handle the current scale of the crisis. How does a state with such a significant cultural and economic history arrive at this point? Why are so many of its residents slipping through the cracks? And more critically, what future awaits if fundamental changes aren't made? Number 3. Texas. Everything is supposedly bigger in Texas, right? Big dreams, big cities, big industries. That's the prevailing image. The state boasts booming growth and economic expansion. But concealed behind this narrative of prosperity lies something much quieter, yet far more alarming: a rapidly growing crisis of poverty and homelessness. This is contemporary Texas, a state where the gap between prosperity and poverty sits starkly, often just blocks apart, and the line separating the two is becoming perilously thin for an increasing number of residents. Here's a fact that might surprise you. Texas currently has one of the largest homeless populations in the entire country. And while some cities like Dallas recently reported a 16% decrease in homelessness, this localized improvement doesn't capture the full picture across the vast state. Because guess what? In many other parts of Texas, the situation is deteriorating, and it's happening fast. Consider Houston, where shelters are consistently reporting record-breaking demand, struggling to accommodate everyone in need. In Austin, sprawling tent communities have become a common sight along highways and beneath overpasses, visible symbols of the housing crisis. Even in historically more affordable rural areas, families are increasingly facing housing shortages, contending with sky-high rents and the disappearance of affordable options. Official statistics reveal a sobering truth. 1 in 6 Texans currently lives below the poverty line. These aren't just abstract numbers. They represent real people, real families, barely managing to hang on. And then there's the escalating cost of living. While Texas is known for attracting businesses with its favorable economic climate, the benefits haven't trickled down evenly. Many residents, particularly those employed in the service, construction, or education sectors, are not experiencing the wage growth necessary to keep up with rising costs. Rents in major metropolitan areas have surged by as much as 30% in just the last few years. For a single parent earning minimum wage, this increase represents an insurmountable financial hurdle, pushing them towards the cliff edge of eviction and homelessness, often with no safety net to catch them. Perhaps most concerning of all is the burgeoning youth crisis. A growing number of young people in Texas are experiencing homelessness. Many are aging out of the foster care system with inadequate support, while others are fleeing unsafe or unstable home environments. Without robust support systems, their chances of escaping the cycle of poverty and homelessness are tragically slim. Texas is indeed growing. People are relocating here daily, drawn by the promise of opportunity. But growth without corresponding support systems and affordable infrastructure inevitably creates cracks. And right now, across the Lone Star State, those cracks are rapidly widening, threatening to swallow entire communities into sinkholes of despair and instability. What happens when a state renowned for its strength and economic might begins to fracture from within, leaving its most vulnerable populations behind? Number 2. Oregon. Towering pine forests, misty, dramatic coastlines, and a reputation for a relaxed, laid-back lifestyle. This is the idyllic image often associated with Oregon. On the surface, it seems like a dream destination, a place of natural beauty and progressive ideals. But beneath this appealing veneer lies a truth that many prefer not to acknowledge, a reality often hidden from view. This is contemporary Oregon, and you would be utterly shocked to learn just how profoundly the homelessness crisis runs within this state. In the year 2023, Oregon tragically held one of the highest rates of unsheltered homelessness in the entire country. Consider this staggering statistic. Nearly 70% of Oregon's homeless population was living outdoors or in vehicles, meaning they had no shelter whatsoever, not even a temporary bed in an emergency facility. The sheer numbers are staggering, with over 20,000 people across the state experiencing homelessness, and that count continues its relentless upward climb. Take Portland, a city once celebrated for its creative energy and vibrant, distinct neighborhoods. It now grapples daily with the reality of large, visible encampments, social services stretched far beyond their limits, and rising public tensions surrounding the crisis. But this emergency isn't confined to the major cities. Rural areas throughout Oregon are also feeling the immense pressure, as housing becomes increasingly difficult to find and prohibitively expensive for long-term residents and newcomers alike. What's fueling this devastating situation? It's a dangerous combination of factors. Soaring rental costs put immense strain on household budgets. Limited availability of genuinely affordable housing leaves few viable options for those struggling financially. Furthermore, Oregon faces significant challenges with its mental health support system, which is still working to catch up to the immense need across the state. And here's something many people outside the region might not fully grasp. Oregon has one of the highest rates of homeless children per capita. Entire families find themselves trapped in limbo, forced to sleep in shelters when space is available, transient motels, or even their cars. The wet, cold, and often unforgiving Oregon winters exacerbate the danger. For those living unsheltered, survival itself becomes the primary daily objective, a constant battle against the elements and despair. So, what happens when one of the most naturally beautiful states in America simultaneously becomes one of the most difficult places to simply survive for a growing segment of its population? How did a place seemingly embodying the dream of a progressive, nature-focused lifestyle reach this critical point? Number 1. Colorado. Snow-capped peaks piercing azure skies, crisp, fresh mountain air, and a booming, dynamic economy. Colorado often projects an image of an ideal place to live, work, and play. It sounds perfect, doesn't it? But look closer. Beyond the ski resorts and thriving city centers, and you'll uncover a reality that most visitors, and even some residents, never fully perceive. This is contemporary Colorado, a place where the cost of living is climbing at such a breakneck pace that even full-time workers are being systematically pushed out of their homes. Consider Denver, the state's capital and largest city. Homelessness there jumped by an astonishing 31% between the years 2022 and 2023 alone, according to data from the Metro Denver Homeless Initiative. You would be shocked to witness the sheer number of people in this state forced to live in tents, enduring brutal winters with little to no access to essential services or support. What lies behind this escalating crisis? It's a toxic mix of factors converging with devastating effect. Skyrocketing housing prices make home ownership an unattainable dream for many. Rapidly rising inflation erodes purchasing power, and a significant shortage of accessible mental health support leaves vulnerable individuals without the care they need. The average price of a home in Colorado now exceeds $500,000, and rental prices are closely following this upward trajectory, making stable housing unaffordable for a large segment of the population. While the job market might appear strong on paper, wages have critically failed to keep pace with the escalating cost of essentials, especially housing. Even the picturesque mountain towns, once considered havens, are no longer immune. Long-term locals in places like Aspen and Vail are being priced out of their own communities by an influx of wealthy outsiders. Service workers, essential to the tourism economy that drives these areas, face grueling commutes often lasting hours, or are forced into the desperate measure of sleeping in their cars simply to keep their jobs. So, when did the cherished dream of living amidst the majestic Rocky Mountains transform into a harsh struggle just to stay warm, fed, and sheltered? Across the nation, from sun-drenched coastlines to snow-covered peaks, the crisis is starkly evident. More Americans are falling through the societal cracks than ever before. Disturbingly, some of the very states that were once lauded as symbols of opportunity and prosperity are now serving as cautionary tales, flashing warning signs of systemic failure. But here's the crucial point. These stories, these struggles, matter profoundly. They deserve to be brought into the light, to be told honestly, and they absolutely deserve our collective attention. These narratives highlight a complex and growing crisis across the United States. The reasons are multifaceted, ranging from soaring housing costs and stagnant wages to inadequate mental health services, addiction epidemics, and the devastating impacts of natural disasters. States once seen as beacons of the American dream are now facing unprecedented levels of poverty and homelessness. California struggles despite its wealth. New York's iconic cityscape masks deep inequality. Florida's retirement dream sours for many seniors. Washington's tech boom leaves workers behind. Massachusetts faces a severe family homelessness crisis amplified by migration. Hawaii's paradise image contrasts sharply with its high per capita homelessness rate worsened by disaster. Illinois confronts urban and rural despair. Texas grapples with poverty amidst growth. Oregon battles high rates of unsheltered living, and Colorado's appeal is tarnished by unaffordability. These situations demonstrate that economic prosperity in one sector does not guarantee stability for all residents. The existing safety nets, shelters, housing assistance, social services, are consistently overwhelmed, unable to cope with the scale of the need. This is not just about individual failings. It reflects systemic issues demanding comprehensive solutions, greater investment in affordable housing, mental health care, and robust support systems. Ignoring these warning signs is no longer an option, as the cracks in the foundation of American stability continue to widen, affecting communities large and small, urban and rural, across the entire nation. The challenge requires acknowledgement, understanding, and concerted action to address the root causes and provide meaningful support to those left struggling on the margins.